Welcome to Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes. This is Grand Arena Chat. Glurm and I have started a new weekly Grand Arena conversation series. This is part 2 of that conversation. Part 1 is over on his channel, and there will be a link in the description to that video. All credit goes to Glurmit for putting this together, and I'm a bit late putting my half out. It was a bad stretch of days to integrate something new and learn how to do a few video editing things. So apologies to Glurmit and all of you for the delay. The subsequent iterations of this series will be more timely. Part 1 of the conversations will be on his channel, and look for part 2 on my channel. And as we figure out the infrastructure of these things, there will be a more regular schedule, more regular graphics. It'll be refined over time. But to the conversation. This is Glurmit and Still Plays. We've got a new recurring series where once a week we'll put out a video on each of our channels where we look at the Grand Arena from a free-to-play and paid perspective. This will be a free-form conversation taking a look at shifting metas, new characters, and any gearing or planning strategies we think will help moving forward.
Awesome. So, in case you guys didn't realize, I am Glurmit, and that is Still Plays, right? Just to clear that up.
Yeah, usually most of those counters get easier in 5v5 than harder, so that I would not be surprised by.
Yeah, so...
It's definitely like the Fennec Lord Vader counter.
Yeah, exactly.
Easier in 5v5.
Well, I mean, right now, Fennec, if you set Maul and Thrawn with Lord Vader, your Fennec's not one-shotting, which is fantastic. That's what I've been doing. Yeah, you give up the one, like, you give up your team, in other words. Someone can easily take in an easy pre-shot, let's say, where they just take out the two sides, because there's no royal guard, but in terms of guaranteeing a hold, it's most likely going to do that. Now, for the Fennec counter to work, or just not even Fennec, but the counters to Reaver here, my recommendation, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this as well, is if you're high-end, like against the whales, where you're going up against Relic 7, Relic 8, Relic 9 Reavers, I would recommend Relic 7 on Cere, Nyla, Savage. It's expensive, but I think it's worth it. And like we both said, if you want to go from more of a better in all game modes, don't be afraid to take Bam and Mando to Relic 7. You can use them in a Maul Mando's team in a raid, or you could even just do a Scoundrel team as well.
Yeah, the big thing that seems pretty clear is that high relics are going to be very important to countering Reva. It's not something where Relic 5 is really going to be enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Even with the Traya counters, it seems like high relics is going to be pretty important.
So, I know that you've done a video on the new raid, current season, all of that fun stuff. And one thing I want to jump in and say is don't be afraid of committing to these high relics, because in the space of 3 days for me, I've already taken like 2 characters almost to Relic 7, just with the new raid currencies. Yeah. It's extremely powerful, and it means that if you're watching a video today, you can absolutely plan to have your Fennec counter or your Fennec, hold on, my mind just went blank. Fennec counter or your Traya counter ready by the next 3v3. I think that's a good plan.
Yeah, it's something where, like, that's what this raid's about. This raid's about helping us move towards those high relics, so it's something that we should be looking at as an opportunity and not really as an obstacle.
Exactly.
And with the raid, how that's facilitating those high relics, there's going to be a nice little window of opportunity here where by understanding that now, you can be working towards those higher relics a little bit faster than your other opponents in your bracket who may not have really processed how quickly we can be developing those. They might approach it a little bit more slowly. So getting some of those characters like Star Killer or your GLs, if they're not already at high relics, up higher, or building out a lot of those counters like your Gas or an Afro or all these pieces, so that each of our important key squads can become even more dangerous.
No, I think that's a great point. It's almost like, when we were talking about Reva and we were saying people who have her at an advantage. People who have her already are at an advantage, right? We could also argue people who take advantage of the raid changes now and they start relicing characters quicker, the advantage is almost greater. And if you're free to play, this is insanely good, because like we spoke about pilots earlier, some of them need high relics, and even now with the raid. So for example, this is more pay to play focused, but I've got my Wookiee team that I'm working on, right? So the team I have penciled in is going to be Tarfful. I'm going to use Veteran Smuggler Chewie. I'm going to be using Clone Wars Chewie, Zalbar, and Mission, right? Now 2 of those are actually raid characters. So I'm already going to be bumping Zalbar and Mission to R8. Now, obviously, some of you may watch and say, why would you do that? It may seem crazy at first, but the higher the relics, the more counters it opens up, the more it's going to shut down opposing counters. And at the same time, I'm basically filling out an entire R8 team. I already have Beskar Mando at R8. I already have Boba Fett at R8. So then I fill in, and all of a sudden I have a team that can compete. So this is all because of the raid changes. And it's still going to be benefiting in GAC. It's going to be benefiting in other game modes as well, right?
Absolutely. And as a free-to-play player, the biggest metric that is determining whether or not I win or lose in Kyber 2 is not the number of relics, it's the number of high relics. Yeah. I look at the number of tier 7s, the number of tier 8s, the players who have a big advantage in that metric. Yeah. That's usually a good indicator of whether or not I have a chance to win or lose.
Yeah, 100%. Like, what I would say is, when you're scouting your opponent, don't just look for the number of Gear 13s, because there's not much difference between a Relic 1 and a Gear 12. There's not much difference between a Relic 5 and a Relic 3, for example, other than being able to use Datacrons. That's the only big thing there. But it's important to look at the numbers of Relic 7s, the Relic 8s, the Relic 9s. I would even say Relic 7s are probably more important to look at than anything else, because Relic 7 is a big mastery gain for characters. And at the same time, it's important to look at mods. So, for example, my Savage, right, is Relic 3, and when I had him modded, I had to unfortunately change it lately. But when I had his mod set I'd made for him, he has around about 86,000 health. Now, the average for Kyber is Relic 7. I think it's about Relic 6.5 on average for Savage. But the average health was only like 65k. So it's not just looking at the relics, it's looking at the modding. Because a high relic character with bad mods is useless, in a way. Especially, you free-to-play people. You're going to be punching up when you see those teams with low relics, low health. For example, a very common team, I don't know if you face it much, but I've seen it a few times, on defense, is the Treya Nihilist Savage team in Freeze. Now that team is scary, but what people don't realize, if you don't have high relics and if you don't have good mods, Padme Gideon comes in and one-shots very, very easily. You're not even going to give them a chance to annihilate anyone. So my advice for anyone, and I'm sure you agree with this, is high relics should be a priority at this point, because you can get them easier now. You can buy those inbiddles, you can buy the electron conductors, you can buy all of these in the raid store. And on top of that, making sure you're staying on top of mods. Those calibrations are key, just modding in general, right?
Yeah, mods will always be the game. You can't sleep on them.
So, something that we want to talk to you guys about today as well is the introduction of the newer Marquees. We have all 5 of them now. We're not going to be talking too much about Saw today because he's still very new. I don't have him up and running, and Still Plays hasn't had the opportunity to test them as much as they would like.
Yeah, I got a couple battles in, but I don't feel like I learned anything.
Yeah, there's someone in my guild who has an R8 Omicron Saw, and I'm itching to find out how that's doing. But one thing I want to jump in and say first is I'm very excited for these characters. I was very excited to begin with. I know you all agree with me on this. I feel like the current Marquee set, the only Marquee set that even comes close in power, was Starkillers. Yeah, and for free-to-play people, I'm telling you now, you can run these at low gear.
Absolutely, 100%. They're, especially Sear and Cal. They punch up crazy amounts, but they're all very impressive.
So I'm going to leave you to talk about Sear and Cal, because mine are still low. I think my Cal's gear 12, but I've not really used him much yet. and my Cere is unzated, unfortunately. But I do want to jump in and talk about Tarfful, because Tarfful is one of the characters I actually decided to unlock 7-star day one, and I haven't posted a video yet going over my experience with Tarfful. I really wanted to wait, and rather than doing it, in the first week, I wanted to see how he does in Territory War with the Omicron, how he does in GAC, and how he does on defense and offense. But what I will say is the first week of having him unlocked, I only had one Zeta. It was the unique Zeta. I did not have the lead, and he got one-shotted on defense. Unfortunately, it got beaten by JTR, BB-8, and R2. Not the greatest, but it worked, right? But then, this Grand Arena, I've used him on defense 2 rounds in a row, and he's held both times 4 times. So he's had 8 holds over 2 rounds. And looking at the data, looking at the stats we have available, I've got it up here. On defense, the teams that are typically beating him are gas teams, Padme Gideon teams, teams with like Commandos, so bounty hunters. But a lot of these seem to be winning either due to relic disparities, where it's like Gear 11 Tarful, or because you can check mods now as well, Tarful is slow or the team just isn't optimally modded. Now, for context, my Tarful's currently number 5 in the game for speed. I think he's like 344, which takes him up to 364 speed in game, and I think that makes a big difference, honestly. Because unless you're going up people with like 380 speed Gideons, which do exist, they're not going to be able to do that because Tarful's going to come in, he's going to stun. Padme can't cleanse Gideon, so it's a little bit dicey there. But do you know what's really, really surprised me with him? And I'm interested to hear your take on this from a lower gear perspective. He's been very, very strong on offense to me. So in Grand Arena, I've taken him up against GI Inquisitors, and he max bannered. It took a while to go through the battle. I think I was about a minute away from timing out. But it was a win, and it was max banners against a team would have pulled something good. In TW, with the Omicron, I've used him against Droidica Omicron team. I misplayed. I misplayed it ever so slightly, but I could have easily won. And then I've also taken it against more Mandos, and I think that worked in Grand Arena, and that was the most fun ever. Zalbar just goes crazy, nukes everyone. I would say, honestly, he's been very, very good for me. And for people who are maybe higher up in the game, people who don't mind spending a little bit every so often, I honestly think Tarful is one of those must-haves down the line, because he's basically transforming a non-existent team into a good team. And the best thing is, it's not even like you're failing, against bad teams. Like, I'm looking on offense here, so he beats GI, he beats Adrad, he's also beating Hux with TIE Pilot, Omicron, he's beating Dash teams, he's also beating Iden for max banners. Can you imagine that? That seems very, very good to me.
That's nice.
Yeah, and okay, these may not be the best teams ever, but these are good squads that pull banners, that pull good teams. So I'm interested to see what you've done with him.
And with Tarfful, I've got 3 stars, Gear 11. He does have both his Zetas, and first couple matches I tried him with Zelbar and Clone Wars Chewie. I was encouraged by how much of a beating they could take.
Yeah.
But Clone Wars went down pretty quickly, and they didn't really have a lot of opportunity to build up some stats. But recently, I swapped out Clone Wars Chewie because of that performance, put in Vandor Chewie, and that buys them enough time where I started being able to win with them, and that allowed that offense to start stacking up over time. And you read the kit, it is critical that you make Tarful as fast as possible. Everything's about making them ramp up those stats really fast so that they can become both tanky and offensively dangerous. And I think in 5v5 they're going to step up a level, because right now it's a little bit easier to focus down on them, counter them, but the more Wookiees there are, the more you're going to see that stat boost happen.
I think you made a great point on making Tarful fast. I think it's something people will catch on to. I think he is at 181 base speed. He also has 20 speed from his unique, so you can easily get him into those high tier speeds. And honestly, once he starts ramping, that team is insane.
Everything in that kit is about those taunt triggers. So the more Tarful can trigger it, the more the other Wookiees can trigger it, then you get all those stacking stats. The speed is critical.
Right, so what have you found from Sear and Cal?
So Sear and Cal, they were a team that I fell in love with immediately. I did put
Yeah.
the Omicron on right away, so I don't even know how she worked really without the Omicron, because
Mm-hmm.
that Omni was, when I read that thing, I was like, that needs to go on right away.
Yeah.
And she can take a beating. And Cal, like 3 stars testing for both of them. Like I've got a 7-star Cal now, but for a couple weeks there was 3-star
Yeah.
testing, and in those scenarios it was always Scavenger Ray who went down first. And I've got a
Yep.
Gear 12 Scavenger Ray, but she was the weak link, not them. And then that one hit shot that Sear has, that works perfectly well
Yep.
at Gear 11. It's really impressive that you don't have to wait until relics or higher stats to start seeing that one-shot capability. It's there from day one.
Yeah. So, would you recommend this as a team for free-to-play people to be farming?
I think absolutely. I mean, it's a little bit more work because if you haven't also built up Fulcrum, if you have ignored the Resistance faction, so you don't have a Scavenger Array,
Yeah.
if you, and you do have to worry about Kairos on 2 characters and
Mm-hmm.
Zetas, so it's a little bit more work,
Yeah.
but I think it's there, and it's only 2 characters who need Kairos versus some of these other factions who need a little bit more.
So, I'm looking at the data for Sear on offense here. Some interesting teams is beating. More Mandalorians is beating. It's also beating Zori teams. Granted, none of these have a Relic Zori, so no Datacron, but it is beating Zori. Yeah, that's not bad, right? And I can tell you now that I went up against a full R8 team on Macron as well. It was Sear, Cal, and Fulcrum on defense. All of them R8. The Datacron on Cal. I burned bounty hunters because I haven't faced it, right? So I took in a team. I took in bounty hunters. I thought, Bosk is R9. I'm gonna survive. I just got destroyed. So after that, I took in General Skywalker, and he almost lost. General Skywalker almost lost his team. I'm gonna put it out there now and say, especially from a pay-to-play perspective, you should be getting Cere. Because Cere especially is going to be slotting in, and this is the funny thing, everyone was like going crazy about Cal and how good he is with Ray, for example, but Cere and Starkiller in 3v3, let me get it up for you here and I'll tell you guys what I found. But Cere, I think it's Color and Unmasked and Starkiller. So it's been set 29 times and only 31% of them have been a win. And now, would it make you laugh if I told you there's only one? Or actually, I lied. Okay, yeah, there is. There's only one non-GL win out of all of those battles, and that was Treya, Malik, and Nihilus.
Oh man.
Yeah, Bounty Hunters and Fennec lost, Clones lost, Darth Revan lost, Starkiller lost, GI lost, Iden lost, and the list goes on. This team, I'm telling you now, if you're like, even if you're someone maybe who's free to play, maybe you already have Starkiller, I would recommend next 3v3, you give this team a shot. Just Cere in the lead, Starkiller and crew, because I can't emphasize enough how crazy this team is looking, and I'm worried to see what happens going forward here.
She looks very important, and it's one thing, just a general theme about Marquee characters. Like I know players don't like going after single shard farms, but a lot of these new kits are just so powerful that they are worth. You can build advantages by going after them early because your opponents are just not going to have solutions. They're not going to understand them because they're newer, they're less familiar. People haven't ingrained a counter. Like you go after an old squad, people know how they want to approach it. They've got a plan for it. They're not going to have a plan for Sear Jr.
Absolutely. So, and I think it's reinforced even more when you consider a lot of the characters coming out are low gear viable, low star viable. For example, if you have Zori, so many people have her from the Marquee, why leave her, at gear 0 or gear 1 when you could take her up to gear 7, apply the Zetas, and all of a sudden she's going to be punching up. That's going to be causing your opponent crazy issues. I think that, you know, if you want to do one Grand Arena especially, I honestly think it's important to not chase the meta, per se, because obviously if you're free to play, it's going to be harder. If you're paid to play, it's still hard, right? It's going to cost a lot of money. But at least you need to keep up with the current new trends before they become widespread and the counters become too available. For example, like Zori, you know, give it 1 or 2 weeks. If you saw how well she was doing, you know, apply the Zetas, put her on defense. It's going to give you that results. You know, even now, Cere, we spoke about Cere, and again, it's the same thing. Tarful, I mean, based on your comments there, he doesn't seem as good in those low gear tiers, but
at least in 3v3.
Yeah,
5v5, I think it'll be there.
Well, hopefully, I think in 5v5 he's going to be a really strong team. And then Cal again. I'll be honest, from my perspective on this is Cal is very good, but I would say Cere's probably better. That may surprise even you, I think. And the reason being, Cal.
I agree with that.
You would agree? Oh, well, at least we agree on something. Now, for me, the reason behind this is Cal is kind of dependent on other characters. You know, like Cere, you can slot in with Star Killer. Cere, you can slot in with Cal. You can slot in elsewhere. Cal, I'm not sure where you're using him. Maybe outside of Ray, maybe outside of a Cere team.
Yeah, I agree. He's a little less plug and play viable.
Yeah.
But to echo what you were saying about Zori, like one of the things that happens with these new Marquee characters, especially if you set them on defense, your opponent thinks they're trash.
Yes.
They see the gear 11, they see the low stars. They don't think they have to take it seriously, and you get cheap holds because they don't bring in enough. And my gear 11 across the board resistance squad that had like a 5-star Zori got a ton of holds. And I look at the Grand Arena history, and it's always my opponents just bring in something weak, they don't take it seriously, and then they get blown up. And
you've hit the nail on the head. For anyone who is free to play or trying to be uber efficient, having these small advantages is huge. I mean, I've done it myself. I'm sure you've done it yourself sometimes. You see these really weird low gear teams. You're like, okay, I can underman this. I can solo this. You go in and you're dead in a second. And if you want to do one in Grand Arena, you need to take advantage of these. So the only character left to talk about today is Merrin.
Yeah, Marin is a great character. The Night Sisters were already very low gear viable, as long as you have one relic really on Dacha, and the Dacha on the relic on Ventress would also help support that. But Marin really helps elevate what they do. It's the 5th spot in a Night Sister squad was always unimportant. You had a lot of different options. Marin gives you a really powerful unique that just boosts up what they can do. And it helps eliminate a lot of the RNG that could exist in some of those matches.
So I'm going to be honest, I haven't invested in my Merrin yet because I'm waiting till I can get that unique unlocked, which you need gear 12 for, before I go crazy with her. But what I can say is I was, one of my alt accounts is in the Senate Alliance, and I joined someone streaming the Assault Battle the other day, and they had a Relic 7 Merrin, Relic 5 Dacha, and everyone else was about Relic 1 to 5, and they still couldn't win the Assault Battle. But for those of you who don't know how to do it, you just take out Night Sister Zombie and you put in Talia, and they did it first time. They had a Gear 11 Talia. I just thought that was really interesting. It's another use of Merrin outside of Grand Arena, which she does look very good. Based on the research I've done, she seems more of a 5v5 character than a 3v3.
That's true with Night Sisters in general.
Yeah, because I'm just gonna get it up here. So on offense, it's beating Grievous. It's beating teams like Geos, which, do you know what? Geos at the high end isn't even a big problem right now, because with Poggle Datacron, that is quite huge. GI's a win, Adrad's a win, Tuskens, interesting. Tuskens with Boba Fett, Son of Django there. So she looks like a good character. Hopefully, next time we do this series, or next time we do this episode, both of us will have more to say on Merrin. I kind of want to end by asking you one question. Out of the new Marquees, which one is your favorite?
It's going to be Sergiundo.
Okay.
That one, I think is pretty easy. I think there's more fun one. No, he's pretty fun. But yeah, for me it's Sear.
Okay. And for me, it's Tarfful. You got to go for the Wookiee power, you know.
Oh,
All right.
absolutely. He's a close contender at number 2. He's definitely a lot of fun.
he,
Sear ability to just like she tanks.
yeah,
She can take a beating, and it's really impressive.
for sure. So I feel like okay, hold on, let me retake that bit. So anyone who's watching, make sure to leave comments down below and leave any questions you want us to cover in the next episode, and we'll read your questions, we'll answer them. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. This is the first episode, so we're still learning, and if you have any suggestions or improvements, let us both know. And should we give everyone an idea of what the next week's topic is going to be? As this week we did Reaver, and I know we spoke about this the other day, so do you want to let everyone know what the next topic's going to be?
We've been discussing Lord Vader and really how to view him in the context of the game.
Yeah. So that's what you got to look forward to next week. We're going to be covering Lord Vader and really going over, is he as bad as people say on defense and offense? And if he is, how can you make him better? And maybe he's not, who knows? But we'll be talking about that next week. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to go check out both of the channels, because this has been split in half. Obviously, one half's on my channel, one half is on Still Plays. And as always, guys, from me, I hope you have a glowing day, and I'm sure Still Plays has something to say as well.
Yeah, well, thank you all for watching. Be excellent to each other.